Hi, my name's Jennifer Poland, and I performed my ADA assessment on the business building at Smeal College of Business. Disability is defined as a person who has a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities. 12.8% of the U.S. population has a disability. This is a legal term that the ADA defines, not a medical. The individual must have a record of such impairment and is regarded as having such impairment. So there must be records saying that this person has a disability that are given by someone with those accreditations. An impairment is any loss or abnormality of psychological, physiological, or anatomical structure or function. Disability in the context of health is defined as any restriction or lack resulting from an impairment of ability to perform an activity in the manner or within the range considered normal for a human being. Handicap is a disadvantage for a given individual resulting from an impairment or disability that limits or prevents the fulfillment of a role that is normal for that individual. A physical or mental impairment is any physiological disorder or condition, cosmetic disfiguration, or anatomical loss affecting one or more body systems. I listed some of the body systems below: neurological, respiratory, cardiovascular, reproductive, digestive, skin, immune, lymphatic. It's also any mental or psychological disorder, such as an intellectual disability, organic brain syndrome, emotional or mental illness, and a specific learning disability. ADA Title III, which is Americans with Disability Act, requires public accommodations to provide goods and services to people with disabilities on an equal basis with the rest of the general public. It prohibits discrimination on the basis of disability in the activities of places of public accommodations. Businesses that are open to the public and fall into one of the 12 listed categories that I will explain later. It requires newly constructed or altered places of accommodation as well as commercial facilities to comply with the ADA standards. So if a building was built before the standards came out, they're not required to fix these things unless it is not that much of an expense to them, that they wouldn't lose too much or it wouldn't cost too much for them. But buildings that are built now have to comply with the ADA standards. So place of public accommodation is defined by 12 separate categories. There's a place of lodging, which is an inn or hotel or a motel that someone would stay at. Establishments serving food or drink, which would be a restaurant or a bar. Places of entertainment, which would be a theater, a concert hall, a stadium, where you would see musicians or teams play that everyone would want to go see. Places of public gathering, which would be an auditorium, a convention center, a lecture hall. Sales or rental establishments, those would be bakeries, grocery stores, clothing stores, shopping centers. There are service establishments, which are banks, dry cleaners, gas station offices, offices of accountants or lawyers, pharmacies, hospitals, public transportation, so the SEPTA buses, the CATA buses at school, and anything else that is provided to the public by the government. Place of public display or collection, so museums, libraries, art galleries. Places of recreation, so that would be a park, a zoo, an amusement park, fields that people play sports at. Places of education, those are nurseries, elementary schools, colleges, graduate colleges, master's program colleges, anything in that sort of realm. Social service center establishments, so those are daycare centers, senior citizen centers, homeless shelters, and food banks. And then places of exercise or recreation, so gyms, health spas, golf courses, bowling alleys. So, some background information on the business building. It opened its doors in 2005, and it falls under the category of a place of education. So, the business building has an honor code. It's really focused on strengthening connections between all members of the community through equality, through integrity, through commitment. Penn State has 6 core values: integrity, responsibility, excellence, respect, discovery, and community. And SMEAL is committed to building a culture of integrity, diversity, and sustainability. So they're focused on embracing unique ideas, strengthening connections between everyone. The culture welcomes everyone, celebrates everyone, and promotes diversity of all people, race, age, disability, and no disability. So the first priority of the ADA assessment is the entrance accessibility. So there's 3 main entrances in the business building, and all routes of travel are flat. They don't require any stairs. They're very easy to get into. All routes are stable, firm, and slip resistant, as you can see through the mats. Everything isn't slippery, it's concrete. And all routes are fairly wide and spacious. They have plenty of room. There's no objects in the way. It's very easy to maneuver. There's no random objects that would be inconvenient to anyone. So route of travel continued. The drop-off has a curve cut, which you can see, which is slip resistant, and it's easy to use as well. It's a small ramp to get up. You can also see there's a lot of space in this drop-off area to let everyone get in easily. So there aren't that many ramps in the business building, but the ramps that they do have are stable, firm, slip resistant, and they're more than 36 inches wide. There are railings on both sides. They're sturdy. They're easy to get into. They usually get you into, there's a ramp that leads to 2 separate rooms, or there's individual ramps in some rooms. Mostly the ramps are only on the first floor rooms, so if someone with a wheelchair or physical disability was going to need a ramp or was going to have class on the bottom floor, the second or the third or the fourth, they wouldn't really have accessibility into those classrooms easily. So regarding parking in the business building, there isn't much parking that's near the entrances. The closest parking deck is East Parking Deck, which is not as close as it could be. And the other one is the drop-off area that I showed you earlier, which doesn't have parking, but it has drop-off. So most accessible parking is East Parking Deck. It has van accessible spaces, and to park in those handicap parking, the person must have an ADA license plate or a card plus any PSU permit. The signs are marked with the international symbol of accessibility, and one of the possible solutions to fixing this problem would to be add parking spaces for people that are handicapped closer to the building, or to make a parking lot closer in range to the building so that it's more easily accessible for those people. Each entrance has a push to open button, so that opens the doors widely for you. It makes the entrance easy and it's operable with a closed fist. Doors are not too heavy. So the doors also have a very clear opening, a lot of clear space. The tripping hazards are minimized, as you can see with these mats. They're all small, very close to the ground. They're slip resistant. It's very easy for people to walk on them. So access to goods and services. The entrances provide direct access to the main floor of the building. The main floor of the building has food for people, it has study areas, it has classrooms, it has a computer lab, printers, everything that you would mainly need except access to the teachers, which are at higher floors, or the dean, or classes that might not be on the main level. So all areas are very open. They provide a lot of space. They're wide, clear pathways. As you can see in Saxby's, it's very wide. There's a lot of seating. Here is one of the workspaces. It's easy to move everything around. Anyone can sit there. And a lot of the rest of the open area, the main level is a lot of open atrium space where people are doing work, and it's very easy to maneuver and walk around and get through there. So signage, most signs are mounted about 56 inches from the floor. It should be about 60 inches, but it's only a few inches off. The signs are adjacent to the latch side of the door, as you can see, and the characters on the sign are raised, which help for people to notice them, and there's braille text of the room numbers and staircases, which you can see at the bottom of these signs. But not the rest of the information is brailled, so you would only be able to know exactly what room you're going into. You can also see that the letters and the signs and the symbols are raised as well, which make it easier for people to notice and understand. So in Saxby's, that's where people can get food and water and drinks and things to refuel throughout the day. So the food ordering counters and cashier counters are less than 36 inches high, so that makes them accessible to everyone. Saxby's should reach most of the ADA assessment qualifications since it was just put into the business building within the past year. So in Saxby's, there are aisles between the fixed seating and it's very wide. There's multiple spaces of seating for people with wheelchairs, so all of these tables are put in place, but the chairs you're able to move them easily, so anyone can sit there. And the one main issue with Saxby's is that the signs and menus are very difficult to read. As you can see, these signs have a glare on them. The writing is not raised, and it's very difficult to read what all of it's saying, and that's from a close-up view. I had difficulty reading it, and I have very good vision. So in the classrooms, there's not many spaces for wheelchair seating. As you can see, there's only 2 seats in each classroom that you're able to move so that someone with a wheelchair could sit there. The tops of the table are in range as well as the knee spaces at accessible tables, but only the first floor classrooms have ramp access. So only the first floor is accessible for all people. Some of the possible solutions that they could do is the fixed seating could have more spaces between one another in the aisles. Students have difficulty walking through the aisles as just a normal person with their backpack, so you can imagine how difficult it would be for someone with a physical disability or in a wheelchair or using crutches. Some fixed seating should be removed to allow more room for wheelchairs in seating area, as there's only 2 spaces for them to be able to sit in the classroom. So the stairs and elevators are very easily accessible. The stairs have a non-slip surface and rails on both sides. The only problem is that it's all the same color, so it could be a little difficult for someone to identify that has issues with seeing. The elevators are very easily accessible. The only issue with most elevators in general is that in the case of a fire, elevators are not permitted to be used. So any person in a wheelchair would not be able to leave if they weren't on the main floor, and that's very dangerous. As you can see, the elevators are right near the stairs, so that if someone saw the stairs and realized they couldn't take them, they would right away see the elevators. So the elevators have both visible and audible door opening and closing and floor indicators. So it's 1 tone when it's going up, and it's 2 tones when it's going down. The controls have raised and braille lettering, as you can see. The white is raised, and underneath there's braille. A lot of it has seemed to be reduced. You can tell it's been used a lot, so they might need to update that soon. But it's very easy to use and understand for anyone. So the emergency intercom is provided. You can see this is an alarm button, there's push for call help, and there's keys and different buttons and a guide as to all the instructions of how to use the elevator, if there's an emergency, what to do, how to handle situations. So instructions are very clear, and the elevators are very large and spacious. So not only could one person in a wheelchair fit in there, multiple people could fit in there. It's very spacious, there's nothing in the way, there's a lot of room. And it's slip resistant, it's easy to be on. So the usability of restrooms In each bathroom, there's one stall fully accessible to people with disabilities. So as you can see, it's very open and spacious. The toilet is lower to the ground. There's handlebars on both sides. As you can also see, it's much more wide and has a lot more space than the smaller ones. And the door opens outward, which makes it easier for people to get in and out. The restrooms also have Braille lettering under their signage, as well as the symbols and the lettering being raised. The paper towel dispensers and sinks are all at heights that are accessible to everyone. So you can see that these are lower, everything's pretty low, it's easy to use, it's accessible, anyone can use it. The faucets, the soap dispensers, toilets, and paper towel dispensers are all operable with a closed fist. Many of the toilets are motion activated. As you can see, the sink is motion activated. To get soap, you just have to press down. And many of the dispensers are either motion activated or pull activated. So it's all very easy to use. And the doors can be easily opened and closed. They have lever and loop handles, which are seen as very helpful for anyone. Additional access, so the drinking fountains are also accessible for everyone. Fountains have ample open floor space in front of them, so there's no objects in the way that they can't reach anything else. The one fountain is closer to the ground than the fountain of standard height. So this is a fountain of standard height, and then they're required to have one that is lower that anyone could access. And as you can see in this one, it's a lower one as well as a water bottle filler that's also low, so anyone can access it. They're easy to use. You just press this. You can use a closed fist, so anyone's able to use it. So overall, the business building is pretty accessible to most people. It's one of the newer buildings at Penn State. It's gotten awards for being eco-friendly, and it fits most of the criteria of the ADA assessment. There's a few things that could be fixed. They could create accessible parking closer to one of the entrances of the building. They could also create more accessible seatings in the classrooms for people with a physical disability. They need to add ramps to the classrooms on the floors that are not on the first floor, because only the first floor is accessible to everyone, or the main floor. And other floors, if someone has a physical disability, they're going to have difficulty getting into the classroom and maneuvering around the classroom. They need to adjust the signage in Saxby specifically to make it more readable to everyone. It has a glare finish, it's very difficult to read, the characters aren't raised. And they also need to add more information with directions around the building. The only way to know where you're going is to look at these tablets that are in the atrium that you can click on for directions. And they also need to add more space in between seats and aisles in the classrooms. But overall, the business building is fairly accessible, and with a few changes, it could become accessible to everyone. Thank you.